Hi everyone, and welcome to the China Marketing Podcast, the place to go to hear in-depth conversations with industry experts, influencers, and Chinese consumers about the latest consumer, product, and marketing trends in China. Each week, we aim to bring you tactical and thought-provoking content that will help you grow your business in China. The China Marketing Podcast is part of the Sinica Podcast Network, powered by SupChina. I'm your host, Lauren Hallinan. Today, I brought my colleague Tom Kruger on the podcast. Tom is the Shanghai Managing Director of Chatly, a WeChat social CRM platform for global brands. In today's interview, he explains why brands need to rethink their WeChat strategies and position WeChat as their brand's core customer engagement hub in China. Many brands are still treating WeChat as the same platform it was several years ago. But in reality, the platform has been constantly adding features and has morphed into this complex ecosystem, allowing brands to bring the entire customer journey from awareness to conversion to loyalty, all in one app. In this interview, Tom guides us through the entire funnel, from building an identified contact, to creating 48-hour journeys, to setting up segmentation and retargeting, to designing commerce and loyalty mini programs. This episode is super detailed. It's essentially a free WeChat CRM masterclass, so be prepared to learn a lot. If you'd like to learn more about WeChat commerce and CRM, Chatly is hosting 2 free webinars later this month. One on March 17th about WeChat e-commerce, and another on March 31st about optimizing the new user experience. I will include links in the show notes to learn more and register. And now, on to my conversation with Tom. Hi, Tom. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we just go ahead and kick things right off by having you introduce yourself and tell the audience, who you are.
So my name's Tom. Born and raised in Boston and been in China now for about 6 years. Moved there in 2014. I'm based in Shanghai right now. I lead a team of 10 in Shanghai for Chatly, where we help international brands use WeChat to improve their marketing, better engage Chinese audience. Been there now with Chatly for about 4 years. But yeah, loving the life in China. Proud dad of one.
Very recent.
7 weeks ago. So baby's tiny, but adorable. Mama's healthy. So very happy dad.
Awesome. Well, as you said, your career is focused on WeChat. So why don't you share with everybody why WeChat? What's so interesting to you about WeChat? What kind of inspired you to start working and helping brands to, use WeChat?
Yeah, sure. I think WeChat in general, I started kind of like everyone else who uses WeChat, where I was going to China originally only for 6 months. About 6 months, me and my girlfriend at the time were going to go. We knew a professor there that I was going to work under. And I'd moved over and said, hey, before you move, we don't use WhatsApp. We don't use Facebook. We use this thing called WeChat. And for me, I just thought, it's just another messaging tool. It's, their equivalent of iMessage. And I was using an iPhone at the time. So downloaded it, started using it. And I think WeChat in general, the first year, so that was 2014. WeChat at that point,
very early,
wasn't huge, wasn't a huge platform. I don't even think they had WeChat Pay in full force at that point yet.
I think it was mainly just a chat app back then. Yeah.
Just a replacement for SMS, I think. Yeah. And so I started using that just to communicate with friends, talk to my mom back home. I got my parents on it pretty early on in 2014. But then it really changed for me in 2015. My wife and I, our girlfriend at the time, moved back to Boston for the summer to get married. We got married. And before I had moved, I had a Chinese bank card. I carried cash. I carried the little Mao that you carry everywhere. It's like a tenth of a cent. And that was, I carried, tons of cash in my pocket just for buying groceries, vegetables, taking the train. Fast forward to 2015, came back from my wedding in Guangzhou. Got back in Guangzhou, and within the first 2 or 3 days, I was like, wow, things are totally different from 3 months before. When I went to McDonald's, they had this little POS machine that has a scanner on it that you could use this little green symbol for WeChat Pay. And then I noticed even the local vendors, like my grocery lady on the street of near our apartment, no longer wanted cash. They had this little QR code that you could use to pay. And so I think 2015 was kind of the turning point for me of WeChat being just a replacement for iMessage to being something different. That was the first mobile payment system that I used. And that was kind of my first entry into WeChat could be bigger. And it was just around how fast and how rapid WeChat Pay came on the scene. So I think that was the first interest that I had in WeChat as a platform. And then I think through the years, just, with the advent of official accounts and then mini programs in 2017, just seeing it as such a unique platform where you have so many monthly active users and so many people who are on a single platform rather than having Android and iOS devices and different web apps. You could have this one platform that everybody's on. That's kind of a closed ecosystem, which is so unique for me as I like to think of myself as an inventor. So you can do so much with that platform.
Yeah, I mean, we often say now that it's more of an iOS, than actually than just an app.
Totally.
Like it's like anything and everything is on WeChat, and it's crazy. Like you said, just between even 2015 to now, like how much has changed with the platform. I mean, it's massively different than when it started. And
so much more than just SMS replacement.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, since moving back to the US, I really miss being able to use WeChat as much as I used to in China. Like I still use it quite a lot. Obviously I communicate with people back in China and everything, but like from a lifestyle standpoint, I can't really use all of those features as much, which is quite unfortunate.
I'm so happy. This trip back home, I'm here for a few weeks. I got my parents, I got my cousins and my sister to all be on WeChat. So my entire family slowly migrating from Facebook Messenger. I have a few family groups. I have one with just my parents, one with my wife and parents, my in-laws, but little by little, I'm converting the entire Boston family to WeChat. Next is my grandparents.
Oh,
we'll
man.
see.
That's yeah. So I think, a lot of my listeners are in China or they've lived in China. So I think they're all familiar and they're probably, having similar feelings to us right now. But for, and even the listeners that haven't lived in China, I think, they're all fairly familiar with WeChat. But I think that, like you said, WeChat has changed a lot over the past couple of years. And so I think that a lot of people here in the West, or people that haven't spent as much time in China, they're still very much in that mindset that WeChat is, like a broadcast platform where, especially when we're talking about, kind of switching over to the brand perspective of, I open an official account, I try and get lots of followers, I should just send out all these posts and like, and it's all about like follower growth and how many people view my articles and things like that. And I think that, as you mentioned, WeChat keeps adding more and more features and growing out the ecosystem. And so I think over the past couple of years, the way that brands should be thinking about WeChat and how they should really be incorporating it into their businesses has changed dramatically. Like it's completely different. But I feel like a lot of people here still haven't caught up to that yet. So I think that's what I really want to focus on today, because that's really what you focus on, is kind of that other aspect of WeChat, and which you often refer to as the brand's core customer engagement hub. WeChat should be your core hub for all of your brand activities in China. So maybe could you kind of explain, what is that concept? Why do you think WeChat should be your core hub?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'd start with the WeChat homepage. And I think where I like to focus a lot of the brands that we work with at Chatly is, if you look at the WeChat homepage, on your homepage of list of chats that you have, because it is still a chat app, you're going to have all of your friends and family that message you. On me, I have my wife, her chat stickied on top, so I'm always talking to her. I have my office. I have a few different marketing groups that I follow, and then I have my family group chat with my parents. And that's my top page of WeChat. And those are the chats that I always go to. But I think what's different between WeChat and even something like Facebook or email or even Chinese platforms like Douyin and Weibo is the brand doesn't have their own, zone within WeChat that's carved out for brands. The brand itself, the main touch point, the official account, the service account, is located directly in that chat experience. So as you look at, your chats with your family, your friends, your girlfriend, boyfriend, you also have the brands that you follow. And I think that to me, is just from an ecosystem standpoint is unique, that the brand isn't so much just, send content, receive content, push marketing, receive marketing. It's more of as a brand, I'm your friend on WeChat. I'm there just like you chat with your family and your friends. WeChat is there alongside those same chats. And so I think for me, WeChat is kind of the core consumer touch point in China, is more than just content. It's really that official account, and people follow you because they want to be the friend of, whether it's a cosmetic brand or a technology brand or an automotive brand. They want to be a friend of that brand, just like they have chats with all of the other contacts that they have. So I think that's kind of the starting point. Is recognizing that on WeChat, it's not so much of a fan page. It's not so much of a content blasting page, but it really is, you are the friend of the contact. You are the friend of the subscriber, more so than I think any other platform.
And also, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but if you follow that brand on WeChat, you have access to a whole suite of services. If the brand's doing a good job, that is.
Yeah. If they're working with Chatly.
Oh man. If they're setting it up correctly, then the user, it's not, like you said, it's not just like a fan page where they can access some information or, complain about the brand or something. Like, they can actually, there's a whole suite of services and functions that they can access through WeChat, which I think makes it really different than, like you said, something like a fan page or something like that. You've kind of touched on, you've used the word a couple of times in the conversation so far, but service account, right? So brands can open subscription accounts and service accounts, right? And you've mentioned service account a couple of times. So what's the key difference between a subscription account and a service account, and which one do you suggest that most brands are opening and why, or should open and why?
Without a doubt, service account. When you look at the APIs that Tencent gives third-party integrations like our platform, they're just far beyond anything that a subscription account handles. Now, I think it's going to depend on the business. I would recommend a subscription account in partnership with a service account for media agencies, things like newspapers, magazines that are, publishers that are publishing content and articles every day. I think there's a place for subscription accounts for even luxury brands that have daily content, daily updates that they want to post out. But I think if you're starting from scratch, if you're starting new, or if you're just building upon a brand that you already have in China, service account is definitely the way to go. And that's one, just because of the APIs that they have, but I think two, because of the exposure. You're there with, like I said, on that homepage, you have front page access to the consumer, and you're really top of mind when you look at engagement.
Right. And so to clarify that for people, just like if you have a subscription account, then all of the subscription account notifications will be collected in a folder. So people have to go like actively seek it out. Whereas if you're a service account, then all the new content you're pushing will appear, right, like you said, with the other chats that you're having, right, in that main feed. So a lot more visibility. So you kind of said, there's a lot more APIs, but could you explain maybe what are some of those features? Like, what are you able to do with some of those APIs?
Yeah, sure. I think if we take it back to the concept of kind of the brand as a friend rather than a brand as a page, you look at what you can do. One is just one-to-one messaging. So your subscriber, your fan, your consumer comes into your account, they send a message asking for how to handle refunds or what's the nearest store location. You as a brand can respond directly back to that person, just like a friend or family would respond. I think taking that further, you have access to things like GPS information. You can tie that back into WeChat Pay. You can send out different mini program cards in different content formats at different stages of that journey. So that level of kind of one-to-one messaging, I think, is really key. And then built on top of that one-to-one messaging, of course, there's personalization. So if I know that you're Lauren, you're a consumer on WeChat, you just bought a handbag maybe a week ago, from that information, then when you come in and interact with my content, I'm giving you a much more personalized experience than someone who I haven't identified yet. And I think that just kind of goes to the more friendship zone that WeChat provides.
Okay, got it. So I want to go into some of these details a little bit more about kind of the different things that you can do with a service account, what kind of things that brands should be setting up when they create a service account. And I know that you often think about it as a funnel, kind of encouraging brands to, when they're setting up their accounts, to kind of think of the different stages of the kind of the customer journey and what features that they need to set up at, to facilitate each of these stages. So you started to mention it just then, with the personalization, but that you can identify, you said that the first stage of the funnel is, to identify that contact. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what exactly that means.
Yeah, sure. When I look at kind of the WeChat funnel, I mean, it's any standard marketing funnel, but really top of the funnel for WeChat is going to be identification. Once you get somebody into your WeChat account, whether that's a KOL, maybe that is something like a WeChat ad that you place, a referral program, many different ways that we can perform top of funnel in WeChat. The next key action, once they subscribe to your account, is going to be how can we find out something about them? Now, brands have done a whole wide range of ways to do this. One of the ways that you can do it is a standard form. They fill out that form, maybe add their phone number, email, name, and from that information, we can identify you as a consumer rather than just a WeChat subscriber. Other ways that they've done it, I saw a multinational, they had placed fake information on your profile when you first follow the account. So that when Tom follows the WeChat account and you get a form, it says, oh, hi, Marcus, rather than Tom. And so it makes you go check the form and see all the wrong information that they've placed. Oh. So it was for an ad hoc campaign that they ran, but it's one of those things that for them it was, hey, let's show them that we don't know who they are. Let's confuse them. Let's give them the wrong information. And then I heard that their form fill was very high because of that, because fans just were frustrated that they had the wrong information about them. So that's another way that you could identify. There's other kind of more advanced ways where you can have, we call it a dynamic QR code, where from a single QR code scan, we can tie that to a PII information like phone number or email. Many other ways you can identify, but kind of that identification is so key. Before we can do the fun stuff of personalization and automation, you really need to find out who that consumer is. Have they engaged with your brand before? Are they a customer? Are they a lead? Are they a potential customer? Before we can do anything else in the WeChat funnel.
And so just to clarify, for those non-tech-minded people like me, so what kind of information are you trying to get out of them? I think probably a lot of people have heard of these Open ID or Union ID is kind of the identifier for a WeChat account. So maybe you could dive a little bit more into that, when you're trying to identify the followers, or you mentioned the PII, so what's the kind of information that we're trying to get out of them? And then maybe, depending on what information you're getting out of them, how can that affect what you're able to do? Does that make sense? Like, like what you're able to do if you have an open ID versus if you have the PII.
So when a consumer of yours follows and subscribes to your WeChat account, there's about 8 different items that we collect. So as a brand, you're able to collect that open ID and think of it like a unique identifier for you as a subscriber on WeChat. The second thing is you get to collect the subscribe time, the subscribe source, and then you're able to collect things like their WeChat nickname, their preset gender, so the gender they filled out and registered their WeChat account for. You're able to collect the location that they set. So for many people, it's the city they live in, but sometimes not. And then you're able to collect a few other things like what QR codes they've scanned from your brand. From those 8 different touch points that you collect, they're helpful, but it's still very generic information. There's nothing that I can say, 100% certain this is Tom or this is Lauren. It's helpful in, kind of the early stages of marketing, but not helpful for personalization. What we're kind of, our goal is we want to take what we call, maybe an anonymous follower, someone who just has those 8 touch points, and over time collect some sort of unique identifier. Now, typically that's going to be phone number in China. Email is not as popular anymore, and WeChat email has kind of gone down over the years. Phone number is best. If you can't collect phone number, then typically if you have some sort of brand ID, like a loyalty ID, you can use things like the loyalty ID from the loyalty card they have, or even things like if they're maybe a financial institution, they have their account name, that you can give your account name or username for that financial institution as a way to identify you in their WeChat account. But the goal is from the 8 touch points, capture at least one point of information that's unique to that one subscriber.
Okay. And so the and also just what is a Union ID versus an Open ID on WeChat?
So both are IDs given by Tencent. Now, Open ID is what you automatically collect when someone uses...
That 8 pieces of information. So that's the Open ID.
Correct. And those 8 pieces of information are tied to a single Open ID, and it's very helpful. Now, when someone follows your account, you collect that Open ID. Now, from that Open ID, the only downside of that Open ID is that if you're a brand with multiple WeChat touchpoints, so you have a service account, a subscription account, a mini program, even maybe a merchant account, which is WeChat Pay, the Open ID on every one of those touchpoints is going to be different. So Tom's Open ID on the brand's subscription account is different than his Open ID on that same brand service account.
Right.
And now that's tricky, especially when you're doing kind of omni-channel marketing. You're doing transactions in a mini program. You want to do service messages in the official account. Now, what Tencent provides as kind of a step above that is the WeChat Union ID.
Right.
And that you can collect. It's a pretty straightforward process. It's through the Tencent Open platform. Takes about, at most probably 2 or 3 weeks, depending on where your brand is located.
To register to be able to collect that?
To register to collect that. And once you collect that Union ID, it's helpful because it gives you a single ID across every one of those touch points. So Tom on the service account, subscription account, mini program, all of those interactions are tracked back to a single ID.
Yeah, which that is so much better. I mean, it's amazing because that's the whole point of the WeChat ecosystem that we'll, talk about a little bit more is like that nowadays you have your service account, but then you also have multiple mini programs for different reasons. And if you can't track, is somebody going on the e-commerce mini program and buying something and then they're doing something on the loyalty and then they're reading an article, like you don't have a complete picture of them. Whereas like if you have the Union ID and then the personal information, then you can really get this. I mean, it's amazing how much of a picture you can get of how somebody's interacting with your account. Oh,
totally. And I think that the patience of consumers these days they expect you to know who they are, why they came to you the minute you touch a brand touch point. And if your brand can't do that, if you're still using Open ID, if you're not collecting information, then the consumer is going to lose patience. They're going to want to unfollow. They're going to go to other brands, other competitors, because they just expect that level of care from each one of the brands they like.
Yeah. And I mean, do you feel like that's even more so, I guess, in the China market with WeChat than maybe say in other markets that maybe people are a little bit more worried about, I guess, like data privacy and stuff? Do you feel like so? in China, people really want the brands to be able to have this data to know who they are? Or
I think they definitely do. And I don't know if it's necessarily they expect it from every brand, more so that they just encourage it, where they're giving their information, the brand has access to it, they've used other touch points. And I think it's on the brand to say, hey, we have their data on a mini program, we should use that in the service account. And I think consumers, especially in China, it's such a norm now that there is such access to information for the brand that it's almost out of place for you not to be able to give that level of care to a consumer. So it's becoming almost the norm in China now.
Got it. So, kind of one of the next things that you think about in the funnel is what's called the 48-hour journey. And that's actually, you've told me before that's actually one of, the 48-hour journey is a great opportunity to actually convince consumers or to incentivize them to bind their ID and to give you that to identify that contact. So maybe you could explain what is the 48-hour journey and how could that be used to build an identified contact on WeChat? Why should brands be using a 48-hour journey?
So the 48-hour journey it's a limitation placed by Tencent on official accounts for brands. And it's that you have 48 hours when someone engages with your brand. So that could be accessed via following the official account. It could be accessed via scanning a QR code, clicking a menu bar, responding to an autoresponder, clicking a hyperlink. Any one of those 4 or 5 actions allow you as the brand to engage someone for 48 hours without using one of your message quotas. For people who use WeChat, there's a very strict limitation that every brand only has 4 messages per month on a service account. And that limitation is per user. So because of that limitation of 4 messages per month, the 48-hour limitation is nice because it gives you 48 hours to send as much content as you want to that consumer. Now, brands that do it really well are going to use it kind of top of funnel right at the beginning of that journey. When someone first subscribes to their brand, they're going to have a journey for them. Typically, it's a few messages in the first 1 or 2 minutes that they follow the account. And that's most of the time it's pushing the consumer to identify themselves. So collecting the phone number, collecting unique ID. But even more so than that, it's driving people to loyalty, driving people to e-commerce, driving people to different coupon and different ad hoc campaigns that they're running at that point, with the goal of using that time period of, free messaging, open messaging, to kind of bring that consumer from kind of early stages to the next stage of their customer life cycle. So very helpful. Definitely brands need to take advantage of it. Sadly, many brands in China don't. And they don't. And you follow these WeChat accounts that have massive followings and you get only one message.
Right. You get that initial welcome message, which is probably what most of our listeners are most familiar with. You follow account, you get a message. Usually it's a pretty generic one too. That's like, hi, name, welcome. Thank you for following us. And then you're like, I don't read them most of the time.
Oh,
like,
not at all,
I don't read
just
them.
Just a formality.
Yeah. It's just, I don't even, if it looks slightly longer, maybe I look at it because I'm like, oh, maybe they're actually saying something worth paying attention to.
Sure.
But yeah, in general, I don't even look at the welcome message. So,
and I think even to that point, the welcome message is such a standard, such a norm that if you can surprise the user with follow-up messages after that, I think that their level of interest in your account just, it peaks beyond kind of normal engagement levels. It's just, it's something that is great to use, but sadly, it just hasn't been adopted yet widely.
Yeah. And I think that it's very similar to like an email funnel, an email funnel that, if somebody subscribes to your account, then you immediately should start interacting with them right away so that then they have a reason to keep staying on the account and explore it and, take action. And so it's, you kind of, the 48-hour journey, you can kind of think about it like an email funnel where, you subscribe and then they send you one email and they drip another one the next day and they're like encouraging you to, maybe purchase something or join a membership or something like that. So.
Totally. And I think that the cost of user acquisition on WeChat is getting higher and higher. WeChat ads are getting more expensive. KOLs, KOCs are getting more and more expensive, especially in the China market, China local KOLs, that I think brands are not maximizing how much effort they just put into gaining that subscriber by not kind of giving them that messaging. And then for the consumer as well, if you just spend time willing to subscribe and all you get is a generic message, what's the value in following the account? Why should they stay with you long term? Why should they stay with you more than a day or two?
No, that's a really great point. And maybe why a lot of brands haven't put a lot of these things that we're talking about, into effect, or maybe they don't even realize that this all exists, is because I think in the past it was a lot easier to get followers.
That's true.
And also to retain followers. And I think, nowadays, like you said, that growth rate has slowed down a lot. So people are finally starting to think about the cost of user acquisition versus the cost of retention. It's
got to be top of mind.
Yeah.
And even in the WeChat ecosystem, I don't know the most recent facts, but I think it's, millions and millions of official accounts now. I think well over 10 million.
Oh, it's got to be like way more than that, I think. I don't know. I would have to look it up.
But the number of official accounts.
I feel like it has to be like hundreds of millions at this point. Because I think there's like hundreds of millions of mini programs.
There are,
yeah. So you'd think that, I think WeChat, I'm sure listeners are cringing right now.
They are.
How do they not know this?
We can cut that. But I think that WeChat is becoming so saturated that
that's true.
One, you're one brand out of hundreds of brands that they can follow. What makes you unique? You spent thousands of RMB in these ad campaigns. You're building partnerships with KOLs, and not only on the commercial side of spending money to get that, but also just on the manpower for brands to have the marketing team devoted to building these brand influences on WeChat. That if you're not engaging, if you're not showing value soon enough, that the cost to unsubscribe is going to be much higher than the cost to subscribe, and getting those followers back. You're losing money every time someone unsubscribes. And I think that's key for brands to realize, is that with China becoming such an aggressive and very competitive market, you need to stand out. And for WeChat being the core consumer touch point, that 48 hours is the most crucial time to stand out.
And I want to also touch on and talk about a little bit more. You mentioned that it's not only the first 48 hours after you follow the account, but that this 48-hour journey can be triggered by, it's pretty much like if the consumer or the follower is like proactively engaging with the account, like you said, asking questions or something like that, that they can actually trigger these journeys. So maybe to clarify for listeners, can you create more than one journey?
You can.
Yeah.
You definitely can. So a few different touch points. One is going to be a QR code scan, and that's pretty frequent. So if you have an offline QR code at your POS, if you're a hotel, offline QR code at your hotel front desk, when a user scans that QR code, that's going to open up that 48 hours again, where 48 hours, even if they were already subscribing, that 48 hours, you can send as much content again after that QR code scan. Now, another touch point.
And that content can be customized to the QR code.
Totally customized to the QR code. Right. So the front desk analogy, if you're checking into a hotel, you scan a QR code for fun things to do, or maybe it's a discount at the food and beverage. That can create a journey that is customized to that month, that week at the hotel around how to better your on-site experience. Now, so that's one touch point. The second touch point is going to be hyperlinks. So in your WeChat account, if you have a hyperlink, if they click a hyperlink maybe on a WeChat text message, so they follow your account and you have a link to a HTML5 page or even a mini program, when they click that link, that's going to open up another 48 hours. So that's also helpful, not so much in starting the journey, but it's helpful in extending it. So if someone follows your account and maybe 20 hours in, they click a link on your welcome message, that can extend it another 48 hours once they click that link.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's on kind of the quick engagement side. And those are very, very important touch points. And I think for a brand to recognize each of those individual touch points as another kind of brand engagement zone, because if someone comes on site to your hotel and they scan a QR code, or they visit your store and scan a QR code, I think that beyond just the commercial side, the kind of driving to a sale, how can we thank them for coming? How can we give them some sort of personalization to say, hey, thanks for visiting us today. How was your store experience? Or could we have done anything better? Or just, thank you for coming and hope to see you again. I think that level of care goes a little bit above and beyond what most people are doing and allows you to stand out.
And I'm guessing that if, for example, also they are scanning those QR codes at, your offline location, then you can also collect that data that they scanned that QR code, and which stores they visited. Or
you definitely can. Some of our best cases are cosmetic brands, and cosmetic brands, just due to the nature of their business, they definitely are a little more aggressive than a luxury handbag or luxury automotive brand. And what they'll do is, based on that QR code scan, they'll send you promotions and discounts for that region or that area of China or rest of world that you're in. And so that level of personalization, even down to the coupons and return visits, bounce back coupons to get you to come back in, those are a great use case of that engagement on a commercial side.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, and I feel like it's just surprising how many people don't know about all the possibilities. So I think that's kind of, from my understanding, the initial part of the funnel. Is there, and then can we move on to the next part of the funnel?
We can.
Okay, so I think the next part of the funnel would be more of how to continue engaging with consumers after that kind of initial 48 hours after they've followed the account. So we've mentioned it a little bit already, that, once you can collect the data, you can kind of get a picture of who they are. But I think you can go even further with segmenting and retargeting content. So maybe you could talk about that a little more.
Sure. So I think right now in kind of the customer funnel, we've just identified our contact. So we've identified Tom. We know who Tom is. We know how he came into the account, maybe what WeChat ad he followed. Now, the second thing we've identified is his personal information. So his phone number, his identifier. So that's the identification stage. Kind of moving to that second stage that you mentioned is really about engagement. And now I think what we see as best practice or best in market is going to be taking that information that you've collected during that first 48 hours and using that to build out your customer segments. Now, brands, when we work with them, they think, we're going to have 1,000 segments. We're going to have 2,000 segments down to every street they live on and every handbag they purchased. And while that's great, that's a lot of work. I think the best way to utilize kind of creating customer segments in WeChat is just simply, have they purchased before? Have they not purchased before? If you're in B2B sales, are they a sales lead or are they an existing customer? I think that kind of first touch personalization or segmentation is about 99% of the use cases that you as a brand need to support. But build out those segments, identify your different groups. Are they customers? Are they loyalty customers? Are they VIP loyalty customers? And once you have that segmentation built, what you can do next with what WeChat allows us to do is create personalized messages. So the standard kind of working model in China is that you have 4 messages per month, and those 4 messages go to everybody. So whether you're an existing customer, whether you're a loyalty member, whether you're a first-time brand engager, those 4 messages go to just blast to everybody on the account. And that's a good starting point. You can reach your audience. But what we're seeing as best with those segments is, let me build out a content scheme for people who are existing customers. Let me build out a content scheme for people who are new to the brand. Let me build out a content schema for people who are, longtime VIPs, and they're maybe the high net worth client that we have. And that level of personalization really works best through WeChat, because they're seeing, hundreds of WeChat messages a day. They're seeing maybe 20 or 30 different brand messages that get pushed to them, and what's enticing them to read, and that level of personalization works really well.
Maybe you could touch on, there's one cosmetics brand in the travel retail space that underneath it has several smaller, or not smaller, they're all quite large, several cosmetics brands within the parent company that we work with. And maybe you could kind of give that example of how they're also not a mainland account, right? They're based outside of China. And maybe you could just kind of talk a little bit about that case study. I think that would help people understand this, how are they using these broadcasts and this segmentation to kind of serve different content to people who might be interested in different products.
So you bring up a great case, and I'm going to share 2. One cosmetic, one more high luxury.
Okay.
For the cosmetic brand, the one that you mentioned, travel retail, they have a single account that supports multiple brands in that family. Now, the tricky part with that is that you're still limited to 4 messages per month. And with some of these bigger cosmetic brands, you could have 15, 20 brands under one parent company. So what they've done is that when you first follow the account, you get a questionnaire. And that questionnaire is not sent to you via a form that you have to fill out. It's just a text message that's sent to you, and you can respond via text as well. So it's using our chatbot. The questionnaire that's sent to you, there's 3 questions. The first is, what is your preferred brand? Now, for a cosmetic brand, they typically have a spectrum of their target audience. One is kind of maybe older, more well-established, high net worth, maybe more high luxury cosmetics, stuff I don't like my wife buying because it breaks my wallet. And then they also have maybe a younger market that is college students, kind of up and comers. They love to look good. They love kind of more hip hop culture, younger culture. And that's kind of not a cheaper product, but less expensive product in the brand schema there. Now, what they do is based on your interest in the brand. So let's say that you're interested in the high net worth brands. Your content you get on WeChat is different than if maybe you're a younger college student interested in the
more affordable
brands. And that, I think that level of personalization has been great for them. Now they take it a step farther. They also do in WeChat on the service account, you're going to have a menu bar at the bottom. And those are, a 3x5 menu button that you can customize with your brand services. They customize that brand buttons based on the preference of brand.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
which is also something that I think most people don't know that is possible, that you can actually create multiple menus depending on who the user is.
That's true. And it's great. I mean,
I didn't know that till like a couple months ago. So.
It's one of those hidden APIs that WeChat gives you that you can use. Now, the benefit of that is that when you're looking at a cosmetic parent company that has many brands, you can't make every brand happy. Some brands are going to be more popular than others. And a lot of times those brands get the content segments. Now, what the personalization does is it says, we're going to give equal access to consumers, to all of our consumers, to all of our brands. And so when the parent company goes to each one of their individual brands, they're giving them total freedom to market, engage, and control that user base, because the user is saying, this is my preference, this is what I want to see. And so that's been great for them. The second use case, it's a little bit more ad hoc campaign that I thought was brilliant, is one of our brands had used the WeChat segmentation and used the personal information that we've collected. For them, it was birthday, to segment people into their different horoscopes. So based on your star sign, for that 1 month of posts, your content calendar was built around showing you jewelry pieces to match your star sign.
Oh, Chinese people must have loved that.
They loved it. It had a 10x reader engagement rate on those messages. And And for a Chinese consumer, I mean, it's nice for any consumer. It's nice that the brand A knows your birthday month. B, they're personalizing the content for the month that you're born in. So you're getting jewelry that's in the star sign. It's, has information about your birthday month. It's showing that extra care that, hey, we know who you are. We want to help you. Here's something that you might like because you gave us information and we built an entire content plan around the information that you gave us. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Pretty easy to set up. You just need someone's birthday and you can build out those segments. That was a brilliant use of segmentation.
Yeah, I love that one. That's really fun. Okay, so we touched on, segmentation, the personalized menu bar. Template messages, because you've been talking about you can send 4 messages to consumers each month, or if they open a 48-hour journey window, then you can send even more than that. But there's also another type of message called a template message, which is a little bit different than, well, actually quite a lot different than the 4 broadcast messages that you've been talking about, which are usually like these long form articles with lots of images and pictures. So what exactly is a template message in WeChat, and how can brands be using those, or when should they be using those? Yeah,
sure. So when you look at, if we were to look at just the engagement rate of different messages, kind of on the higher end with lower reach but high engagement is going to be this template message. Now, a template message is very unique in kind of the WeChat ecosystem. It's different from a rich media message that has lots of images. It's HTML5 based, so you can customize the scrolling left and right, the animations, all of that. A template message is different from a WeChat text message. Text message is just pure text that you're sending through the account. A template message is a fixed format that Tencent has in their library. So from the WeChat backend, you can go to a template message library, and that fixed format is going to have a fixed title, and then it's going to have fixed fields within that message body that you can add content into. So for example, the one I'll give you is shipping and logistics. So you'll have a e-commerce site that you purchase on a mini program. You're a WeChat service account follower. Brands will use a template message. And that template message could have, your package has been shipped. And one of the fields that you can fill out are going to be order ID, expected delivery date, tracking ID, all of that information that you can fill with your own custom information, but to those fixed attributes. Now, the limitation to those is that that message format does have to be in the WeChat library. So there's a pretty significant library of a few thousand messages that you can choose from, but that fixed format has to be chosen from the library of messages. The second kind of main restriction is that Tencent doesn't allow you to use that for marketing. So they don't like you sending it to all of your followers to announce a new product line. They don't like you announcing different coupons and deals. It's very much service oriented. That being said, despite kind of those 2 restrictions of a fixed library and, service related, it's a great tool to use. And the brands that we work with use it for like loyalty point expiration dates, birthday reminders. They use it for coupon reminders. Brands will use it for even like abandoned cart. So you put an item in a shopping cart, you leave without purchasing, then we can remind you that, hey, you put it there, and that offer is valid for maybe an hour or 2 hours after you leave. So it's a great aspect, great tool of the WeChat ecosystem. And the one key benefit is that it doesn't use any of your marketing quota.
Like
so,
your four message,
correct.
Broadcast message quota.
Doesn't require the 48-hour opening, so it doesn't require action from the user. Doesn't use that 4 messages per month, and you can use it at any time.
Got it. So yeah, I mean, it's very similar to like, here in the US, often you order something, you either get an email or a text message with, saying that your order was confirmed, and then your order is processing, and then it's shipped, or you get a message from your bank, like, because WeChat Pay is integrated, so it's similar to like if you spent money on something and then you get a notification from your bank saying like you purchased something for X amount, or like you said, I love the coupon reminders, like that you have a coupon saved in WeChat, so use it before it expires. I think those are some use cases that maybe people haven't seen as often.
Definitely. And what I recommend with brands is look at what you're doing globally on email. And like you said, I mean, that's going to be shipping updates. That's going to be, order, even things like NPS score. So giving a survey, say, hey, how was your checkout experience? How was your product experience? Are you a fan of this product? That type of messaging that you're doing on email translates really well to a template message. And it's pretty easy work to get that set up. So that type of translation, I think, works really well. And I think it opens up a whole new horizon for brands on WeChat.
And I think that's a good point, that like a lot of the things that we're talking about, like you mentioned with like maybe segmentation, that a lot of brands are like, oh my God, we can segment by this and this and this and this and this. And actually, like, really, you can just take a lot of what you're doing in the West already and just customize it for the Chinese consumer segment, and it's not actually as complex as you might think to actually create all of these different segments, to create all of these template messages. Like, you can actually look at what you're currently doing. I mean, of course, you really need to think about the Chinese consumer and, what products and messaging are relevant for them. But like, you can kind of take what you already have there and then translate it over.
100%. I mean, nothing that we've talked about today is new. Nothing that we talked about today other than WeChat was invented in China. It's things that we've been doing globally in every region of the world for 2 decades, really. And so it's just, how do you take that? How do you fit it into the WeChat framework? And you're going to have the same success that you have globally, if not even more, because of the platform that Tencent provides.
I mean, I think the biggest like mind-blowing thing about anything that we've been talking about is the fact that all of this is happening in one app.
That's true.
Like you said, none of this is new. Like, this happens every single day. Like, the same thing happens in the West, but like, it happens on multiple different platforms, on multiple, whether it's on your email, your text messages, your website, your blah, 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 all different. It's so fragmented. Whereas like, everything that we talked about today is like putting all of that in one app, which is just like it just blows my mind.
It's so convenient. From ordering a car to paying for your rent. I mean, it's all in that one app, and it's so convenient.
Right. Okay. So I kind of want to just move on and don't not go too far down that rabbit hole, but e-commerce and loyalty mini programs, right? That's kind of the last part of the funnel, is that final conversion is and so maybe you could just touch on that a little bit. I mean, we've kind of spoken about it some, but the end of the funnel.
So I think when you look at where we are now, so we've identified, we've engaged, we identify who they are, we've given them content relevant to who they are. Really, the next stage for any brand is going to be, how do we create an ROI on all of our marketing activities? How do we convert that segment to paying customers? Mini programs are definitely a great way to do it in WeChat because of, like you said, the one app ecosystem. There's no going to an external page. There's no opening up a new website. There's no putting in new login details. I see a marketing message, I see a product I like, I click, and I go directly to the mini program to buy. Oh,
and I should probably just clarify, I think most of my listeners know what a mini program is, but a mini program is a light app that exists within the WeChat ecosystem. So people can use the app without having to download it. They don't even, like, after they're done, it's not going to take up space on their phone, blah, blah, blah. So just for clarity's sake, in case there are listeners that aren't aware of this. But if you aren't aware of this term, then you're not too, it's so prevalent now in China. I just don't even, I forget that I need to explain it. So anyway, keep with what you're going. So what you were saying.
Yeah, sure. So it's back to that kind of single ecosystem. It's see product, like product, click on product. And instead of opening up some other web page or leaving,
having to go to Taobao or something. Or...
very similar, almost kind of how Instagram does it, where you can view products, view a product tag, click on it, and then view that product within Instagram. But kind of a step further, where brands can customize the entire user experience. So if you're a luxury brand and you want to give a very, black book experience, you can do that. If you're a fast consumer goods company and you want to give kind of a rich experience but with a lot of product, you can do that. And it's completely customizable to the brand. And it's all built in that same framework and ecosystem. So like you said, it's a 1 to 2 megabit framework that loads in 2 seconds. And it's fully integrated with your identity, so you can pre-fill even things like pre-fill your phone number, pre-fill your shipping address, all from WeChat APIs, and it just makes for ease of shopping. Now, for the brand, though, I think tying that to loyalty, like you mentioned, is very, very key, so that you can offer a unique one-to-one, whether it's a mini program UI or experience, based on that loyalty program, but then also giving experiences to loyalty points, redeeming those points all within a mini program.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. And like you said, we're talking about, keeping the entire journey within the WeChat ecosystem. And that's kind of that final last, conversion, right? Is just, if you've been doing everything within the WeChat ecosystem, why would you want to drive them out for that final conversion? Whereas like these mini programs, really allow you to just keep it all within WeChat. And then once they're done, like you said, once they've purchased something, then you could just retarget them and keep them still in the WeChat ecosystem.
You can. And I think for the consumer in China, it's so much easier than downloading an app. Mm-hmm. I look at my own app page and I'm a very loyal Delta customer and I love Delta, no knock on them, but I have this Delta loyalty app that I only check every few months. It takes up a good space on my phone. Mm-hmm. And something like that where within the WeChat ecosystem, I can take a loyalty app like Delta, which is only a few page of UI, quickly get that into a WeChat mini program. It doesn't take any download, doesn't take any homepage space. Mm-hmm. And as a brand, I can continue to resend that to them for use. Mm-hmm. But without requiring them to re-download every time. And it's so much easier for the brand to be able to maintain that on a logistics and tech side, but also for the consumer to want to come back. It's much easier than having an app that they have to continue to re-download or delete every time they don't use it.
Mm-hmm. I feel that's one of the biggest things, like coming back to the US and just that everyone wants you to download their own app. And I'm like, I don't want your app. Like I'm going to open it maybe twice a year. Like I don't want to, but then if you delete it and then you have to like log back in, everything, it's just, I miss WeChat.
Yeah, it's just ease of use. It is ease of use.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we've covered a lot, and we've gone into a lot of detail. So I think I'm going to kind of leave things there. I think that's quite a bit of information for listeners to digest. If they want to learn more about all of this, or get in touch with you, or follow you, what's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out and see what our company does, you can go to chatly.com and you can find us there. And then also, I think LinkedIn and email are probably the best, and WeChat as well. If anybody, you can find my WeChat on my LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. And I'll put all of that information in the show notes too. So anyone listening to the podcast can just look at the show notes and get that information. So thank you so much, Tom, for coming on.
Great having me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview with today's guest. You can find links to their contact info and detailed show notes for this episode on ChinaInfluencerMarketing.com. If you liked this episode and know somebody else who might like it too, don't forget to share. Thanks, and talk to you next week.